phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody. Hello. There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's enough left to do. See?
Hello. Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he could fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
All right, so sometimes we have problems on projects, and sometimes problems are obvious, and what to do about the problem is obvious, and sometimes we don't really know what to do. I just like that escalator video. Some people don't like dealing with problems when they arise, and so we just got to take them in hand. Problems are going to happen on our projects, and so learning how to solve problems is a big part of being a project manager. That's something that you're going to deal with every day, no matter what industry you're in. People are going to come to you with problems, and you're going to have to figure out how to solve people's problems. And so you want to look at different ways that you solve problems. When you look at problems, lots of problems arise on projects. Different examples of project or problems that we see is, work gets done wrong, people don't show up on time, materials don't show up on time, things get missed in the drawings, payments get delayed, all kinds of things. Whether those problems come because of priorities that people have, or procedures, or misunderstandings, or personality clashes. Sometimes we see different problems happening on job sites, and we might call them conflicts or problems, but you're going to have them. That's something that you're just going to have to get used to, and a lot of times they're out of your control. Why they were created are out of your control, or what the solution might be out of your control. And so some of these problems vary over the course of a project, and how we deal with them is going to vary as well, especially if other people get involved or how we do things. And so there's lots of ways that we handle problems. I kind of want you to think about how you handle problems, and there's a few different methods that come about. And so I'm going to click over to a PowerPoint here. I'll still be up in the corner, but just kind of to talk about some things that are out there. Oh, sorry about that. Let me escape out of that and go back to where we're at and go to the share screen here. And so we're going to go here and click into this PowerPoint. And so, see if this flips over. I'm going to display things. So when we get into problem solving, there's different ways that we handle problems. Sometimes people just are hotheads. They really like when a problem arises, they get angry, they get loud, they just get frustrated, and they don't know what's going on, or they don't necessarily know how to react, and so they just get angry when problems come up. But there's different ways that we handle problems. A lot of times, we withdraw from the problem or retreat. If there's contention or a tense situation, many of us, in terms of handling that problem, we'll just get out of that situation. Hey, I'm going to back off. I'm going to retreat out of this so that I'm not in the line of fire. I'm going to step away or retreat so that that problem is not there. Sometimes that's one of our methods for solving a problem or dealing with a confrontation in some situations. And we all do that at different times. Other times it could be smoothing, kind of trying to smooth the problem out, saying it's okay, just calm down, like it's going to be okay. And that doesn't always work. Um, Sometimes it can work, but depending on what the emotional state of somebody is, trying to tell somebody to calm down is not a good thing. I like to use the example when I'm watching BYU sports and I get upset. I don't know why I get upset. It's not like I can control the outcome, but I get upset anyways because I'm passionate and I'm involved in it. And so I'm screaming at the TV, and probably saying not nice things to some of the players, um, or coaches on the screen, but I'm yelling at the screen and my wife tells me to calm down. And there is nothing worse than my wife telling me to calm down, because that just makes me even madder because she doesn't understand how intense I am in that situation. And so sometimes smoothing is not always the best option of solving a problem. And we'll talk about kind of how that works in a minute as well with emotion. But another way that we solve problems is by compromising, by saying, hey, you take this and I'll take this. We'll be able to solve this problem this way, to where we're negotiating, we're problem solving. Sometimes that comes in the term of formal problem solving, to where litigation or problems arise on a job site to where it needs to go to a formal process. And in the formal process, we might have kind of a negotiating stage where people are compromising, they're going back and forth and trying to solve the problem between the two parties. And then it might escalate to the stage where you might need a mediator, or mediation, where you're going through and having somebody from the outside. And usually these are contractual items, to where in the contract it talks about dispute resolution and problems that arise, that if there's disagreements, then after negotiating, if the two parties can't come to an agreement, then they might have to agree to mediation, to where a mediator will come in and act as a third party and try and help the two disagreeing parties come to a mutual agreement. And mediation is non-binding. It's just something that's usually put in contracts to try and avoid a lot of legal fees and disputes. And then after mediation, it will go to arbitration. Now, arbitration is where lawyers start to get involved a little bit. It's a little bit more expensive. And in most cases, arbitration is binding, where they'll have an outside arbitrator come in and kind of make a decision on the problem or the dispute that's going on the project. And then you'll also have the final stage, which is litigation, and that's where it gets very expensive. Lots of attorneys are involved, and you're going to court, and that's the most expensive form of conflict or problem solving, conflict resolution or problem solving. Other ways that we solve problems, we force it, where we say, you will do this, you will fix this. A lot of times as a parent, I end up doing that just because that's the power that I have. Say, no, you're going to fix this. I'm going to force you to fix this problem. Sometimes it might come from an authority of a boss or something else. A lot of superintendents will come off this way and just say, no, you're going to do this, and you don't have any choice. And then another one is confrontation. There's some people that actually like confrontation. They like, getting in somebody's face. They like the kind of rush of emotion that's going on and saying, hey, I'm fully okay with confrontation and getting up into somebody. That doesn't mean it has to be contention. We talk about the difference between contention and confrontation. Sometimes you have to be confrontational. And that's a skill that you're going to have to learn as a project manager, is to be okay with confrontation. That doesn't mean that you have to get angry. That doesn't mean that you have to yell and scream, but you are going to have to stand up for yourself and for your company and confront problems as they come and stand up and get into those tense situations. And it can be awkward. It can be a challenge. And sometimes you have to understand what's going on in that confrontation to make sure that you're doing those things. And in some instances, you might be using multiple of these techniques of how we handle problems on a project with different people. But one thing that I would tell you is you want to match the intensity and not the emotion. And so this is kind of an interesting principle here that I learned in a project management class from over in the MBA school. There was a guy named Ernie Nielsen over there, and he was teaching this class about problem solving, and he talked about this principle of matching the intensity and not the emotion. And the way that he described it was he had a son that had some anger management issues, and he was 12 or 13 years old, and the kid would just scream and get angry and violent, and they didn't really know what to do with him. And so finally they decided to take him to a counselor. And so the counselor met with the son for a little while, and then met with the parents, and then brought the parents in and dismissed the son and said, the problem's not with him, the problem's with you. And Ernie was like, what do you mean the problem's with me? I'm not the one yelling and screaming. We're trying to calm this kid down and everything else. And the counselor told Ernie, he says, you're not matching the intensity. You know, he says, you need to match the intensity, not the emotion. And Ernie was kind of taken back like that and kind of understood after the counselor told him what that meant. And the example that he gave us was he was driving his son to Scouts, and the son was just angry. He's like, I don't want to go to Scouts. I don't want to go. I hate Scouts, blah, 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 and just screaming and kicking the dashboard and everything. And so finally, Ernie just stops the car. He pulls over and he goes, why don't you want to go to Scouts? And he said the kid just was like, because it's boring. And it wasn't that Ernie yelled and screamed, but he matched that emotional intensity of the other person. And so if somebody's heated, like in the example that I gave of me yelling at the TV during a sporting event, and my wife is not on that same intensity level as I am, her telling me to be quiet is not matching my intensity. And just yelling and screaming doesn't do it either. You don't have to yell and scream, but you have to match the person's intensity. You have to understand their feelings about the problem or about their stance on a problem for you to fully understand it and to let them know that you understand it. And so that's an important principle as you deal with people, as you deal with your children, as you deal with your spouse, as you deal with other people that you're called to lead and manage. You need to understand that difference between intensity and emotion. You don't need to get angry, but you need to understand what people are going through. And that's an important part of helping people solve problems and working with people as you're solving problems, because problems do bring up emotions. And so that's something that you want to look at. Another thing that you're going to do as a manager is you're going to help other people solve problems. That's something that comes up all the time. They're going to come to you with problems, and you could solve their problems for them, but that's not helpful, right? You want to teach them to solve their own problems. And so the first thing you want them to do is define what the problem is. And it should be just a short statement of, 1 or 2 sentences saying, here's what the problem is, here's what this desired outcome is not being achieved, and this is why. And so you define that problem, and then you help them diagnose the problem, whether it's a motivation problem or whether it's an ability problem, because there's a difference there. And we'll kind of talk about the difference between those two things. If it's a motivational problem, that's just somebody not wanting to do it. They don't want to solve it. They have the tools, they have the training, they just are choosing not to solve the problem themselves. And so you want to make sure that you are looking at that and saying, how are you going to challenge that person to solve that problem? And sometimes it might be challenging the task or the work, saying, if you don't get this done, the work is going to suffer. This project's not going to be completed. And that might help them find the motivation to do that. Otherwise, you might need to take the next step and challenge their relationship with others and say, hey, if you don't get this done, then these people can't get their work done. And a lot of times we're okay letting ourselves down, but we won't let other people down. You've probably seen it in group work where you're like, oh, well, I don't want them to get a bad grade. I'm getting a bad grade, but I need to pull my weight. And so having that challenge of your relationship with others brought up might provide the motivation for somebody to help solve their own problem and get that done. The next step, you might challenge your relationship with them, your own relationship, where you can say, hey, if you don't get this problem solved, I'm not going to be able to count on you. I'm not going to be able to continue this relationship that we have. And sometimes that relationship, if you're a good manager, means something, and that'll help to motivate them to solve their problems. And then the last kind of step is that imposed involvement. You will do this or else. You're going to find a solution to this problem, or you won't be working here anymore, or you won't be on this team anymore. And that works to an extent, but that only gets you temporary compliance. Eventually, they'll end up leaving or finding something else to do. And so you want to challenge them in their motivation and make sure that it's not just, well, why can't they do it, right? If it's truly just a motivational problem, you need to challenge the motivation. You need to challenge it in these different ways that are shown here so that you can get them to help them solve their own problem. If we go on the other side of things and it's an ability problem where they can't do it, they don't have the tools or the skills or the resources, it's out of their control, then you've got to step in and help them a little bit, but you don't want to just take over. You want to spend time brainstorming with them and have them get the ability to solve the problem. If they brainstorm and they say, well, I could do it if I had these resources, well, see if those resources are available for you to be able to get them. Do they need extra training? Can you get them that training? Do they need access to something else that they don't have? Then facilitate that, but let them brainstorm and let them contribute to the solution so that you're not the one just solving all the problems. You're really trying to teach those that you're managing to be able to solve their own problems, because that allows you to spend time on other things that are more important. And so with either one, whether it's an ability problem or a motivational problem, you want to make sure that you are following up, set follow-up criteria, and then follow up to make sure that the problem got solved and that things got taken care of in the way that they were supposed to. You want to help people solve their own problems. That's the biggest thing. And solving your own problems, you can follow the same method, looking at those different things. I had a mission president who always said, a problem without a solution is a murmur. Don't just go to people with problems. Have solutions thought up. You might have A, B, and C thought to say, yes, here's this problem, but here's what I think we could do about it, and here's the solution. Your solutions might not work and they might not be feasible, but at least it shows that you've thought about those solutions. And so look for ways to solve your own problems. Don't just say, oh, I can't do this. Look at every way that you can. Find out whether it's a motivational problem with yourself of just, well, I'm not motivated to go do the research to find out how to solve this problem, or I don't know who to talk to, or well, do the research and go find out. Challenge your own motivation And if it is truly an ability problem, figure out how to get the skills or the resources to be able to solve the problem that you're looking at. Because you're going to have problems. One thing that we talk about sometimes is what we call the distance principle of problem solving. And that means if you can see a potential problem from a distance, you can generally make changes now at little or no cost or loss of time. But the closer you get to the problem, the more cost it's going to be and the more time you're going to spend in solving that problem. And so some of the major problems that come on projects and cause conflicts and problems, you got manpower resources, equipment resources, money, cost, priorities, administrative procedures. Sometimes it's just jumping through the hoops that cause that. Scheduling. This can get pretty intense when schedules are on the line and money's on the line and people are trying to get coordinated. And so those can be really intense. Responsibilities, misunderstanding, personality clashes also cause problems. And these problems vary over the life of a project. And so you look at those different things, and as a good project manager, you want to know the organization that you're working for. You want to know how they solve problems and make sure that you're listening to the people that are involved in the situation. Be a good listener. Understand the other people's feelings and emotions and their intensity. And then communicate, right? Seek those resolutions and communicate. And take the opportunity to solve problems. Don't just sit there and say, I can't do it. It's with my children all the time, eliminate the word can't, right? Figure out how to do it. You're going to have lots of people that just say, well, we can't do this. Well, sure we can, but it's just going to take something extra. So don't just give up. Don't throw your hands in the air all the time. Your job is to figure out how to solve these problems. And that's what's fun. That's what makes construction management fun, is you get to see these different things and be a part of solutions that come up. So take advantage of opportunities to solve problems and think about that principle of matching people's intensity, not the emotion, especially when emotions get high. So that's our problem solving lecture. Again, we're kind of missing out on some of the in-class activities that we would normally do. But in terms of the content that you'll get out of it for tests and other materials and to have going forward into your career, I think you've got a good idea of, being able to solve problems, and hopefully you've taken a couple things away from this lecture.